Thank you, Rose, and thank you, PMA, for having this event. And hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. So super excited to be here today, and we'll take about 20 minutes to just share what I learned from some of the best customer marketing and advocacy teams in the world, and kind of run through different insights that they shared with us and best practices. So let's dive in, and feel free to put in, your questions inside the chat. Our team will try to answer, and also me and Rose will kind of have a Q&A at the end. So what are we going to cover today? First of all, a quick intro just about, us and who we are, but then we'll dive into what I've learned in the past, 2 years or so from different customer marketers, and we'll touch different topics. So we'll touch strategy and planning and getting buy-in, because that's really the beginning of getting any program. Then we'll dive into how do you build an advocacy culture, because that's part of making the program successful and well adopted by the organization. Then we'll go down into some of the programs. We can't cover everything in this time, but things like reference management best practices, B2B reviews, combining community and advocacy and stuff like that. And then lastly, we would tie into what is customer marketing and advocacy 2.0, kind of the North Star, how advocacy looks like and customer marketing looks like in 2021 and also 2022. My email is here. So, if you want this deck or, a version of this deck after the session, just email and we'll send it later on. Let's dive in. So just an introduction about Crowdvocate. Crowdvocate is really the holistic platform for both product and customer marketers. When we look at customer marketing and advocacy, we look at kind of the full cycle, the life cycle of the customer. So you want to have an advocacy program, and you want to understand what you want to achieve with your customers. You want to engage them across their life cycle. Sometimes you want things like references, reviews, of course. Then you might want upsell and expansion and run those motions with customers. Of course, you want to create a loyalty framework, maybe rewards, maybe gamification. You want to manage references and track the referenceability and track the revenue impact, track your customer's journey and meaningful moments within their journey, and really tie everything together, even with attribution and whatnot. And that's kind of where, you want a holistic approach and holistic platform. Part of what we do is kind of an all-in-one platform for customer marketing and advocacy. Product marketers leverage our platform as well for product insight, messaging, upsell, whatnot. And it really is about the lifecycle messaging and lifecycle marketing within your existing community, within your product and app, but also within different types of touch points. And we'll talk about those. So like in your academy, your support site, websites, and connecting all that to CRM, and then reaching out to customers in all different touch points, in-app, email, Slack, text. So being able to engage customers where they are in the right time, in the right means, and in a contextual manner to their journey, but also tying all that then to CRM and revenue. We're very big believers of journey tracking, journey mapping, journey engagement, and building those customer marketing advocacy scores based on journey insights, based on automatic insights, and not just based on somebody telling you that someone is an advocate. That's because that's how you can scale. And with that, I've covered a bit about who we are and what we do. Of course, feel free to reach out to us and learn more. Beyond that, I would say that really Crowdvocate is about building the category of customer marketing. We have a Slack community that you can join, customer marketing Slack community together with HubSpot. We have a job board, so you could publish their new jobs and look for new jobs in the domain. We have basically workshops. We've done one yesterday with the PMA, was great, and we're doing another one in 2 weeks, so sign up for that. And we have an expert zone and much more. So really, it's all about building the community, the category. So feel free to engage with us and and work together to grow. Okay, so now let's dive into what have I learned from some of the best customer marketing and advocacy leaders out there. Like I said, we'll start with strategy and why strategy is important. So first of all, before you get started, before technology, before platforms, whatnot, you really need to define your strategy and KPIs, right? So, your first year goals, How do you get management buy-in? How do you drive, what can you drive out from the company KPIs, and how do you make it about the numbers? And I'll share what Anna, CMO, told us in one of our sessions, just on my next slide, so you can see that this resonates with CMOs, with leaders, with the people who are the budget holders, who are the executives. You want to have collaboration, and this will tie through all the different feedback we have from different people, right? You want to meet the different departments like sales and marketing, customer success and product, and executive, and get executive sponsorship. You want to have within those different departments a champion. So you're the champion of the program, you're the champion of the customers in your organization, but you want to have also internal champions within each other department that you collaborate with. You want to talk to the customers and see what they want out of it, see what they're willing to do, see how they think they can contribute to your company and to your product and to your efforts, and bring that voice to other departments so they understand the value. And then, of course, you always want to constantly measure and share. Measure what customers have done, measure how that impacted the business. For example, if they gave you product feedback and that feedback eventually became a feature, and that feature is now upselling or cross-selling in, $2 million, you want to be able to kind of track that full cycle, right? If they gave you feedback on something and because of that, your NPS, you fixed it and your NPS score went up. You want to be able to measure that and track that. And again, always show the impact on the business. And all this comes before any type of platform. It's just about the strategy. And from an example, Anna Convery, who was the CMO of Radware, one of our customers, one of the things, she talked about from a CMO perspective on the importance of strategy and planning. And she told us, for example, first of all, you have to understand the strategic goals of the company. How does the program contribute to your company's main goals? That's the main thing for executives, right? And when you're approaching those executives, you have to, just give them headlines. We know executives have short time, they need short messages, but they need to know the headlines and how this and establishing impact, how this has direct impact on numbers. And she also recommends always have a financial slide in your deck when you're presenting the program. Always be sure that you have the numbers there, because then when they think budget, when they put you in their next year's budget, that's when they kind of know, okay, this is what it's going to cost and this is what we're going to get out of it. And that's why I have to make sure it's in my budget. Think, she's telling us how CMOs think and how we should then approach them and other executives. And that's why strategy is so important. And you have to show that you're, going to measure and how you're going to measure the program and the impact. We know that CMOs, we know that product people, so mostly customer marketing programs run to product and of course to marketing. They care about the numbers, they care about measurements, they have to show attribution, ROI, and that's why you have to show to them, prove to them how you're going to measure and, do the attribution. This is, by the way, where tech very much helps. Tools just help you measure much better and quantify. And then you have to communicate the program and its progress. So when you're getting the green light and starting to work on your program, start telling people, hey, we're working on it. This is what we need from you. This is what's in it for you. Then when you go live, hey, we're going to go live. This is what we need you to help us with the go live. Then when it's live, talk about this is what we achieved in the first month, in the first quarter, in the first 6 months. These are the results we've done. Always, talk, blow your horn, blow the collaborator's horn, and repeat that constantly. You have to be, your own marketer as well, not just your customer's marketer. So that was a bit about strategy. Now, strategy ties into creating a culture of advocacy, because it will help you get internal buy-in and get other people to support your program. So Kalina from Asana, who's been in several of our webinars, basically told us, first of all, her tips are, you have to map all the internal stakeholders, and you'll see this in other places. We'll talk about that. You have to be sure that you know who they are and what's in it for them, right? I mean, first, learn what the specific manager goals are. If it's head of customer success, VP sales, head of product, whatever, know what their goals are, not related to you. Then kind of connect yourself to their goals, right? And how can you influence or help with their specific success? Then you want to make sure that they understand that you can help with their specific success with customers, voice, with customer advocacy, with customer marketing, because then they will make the tie between their KPIs and your program. And that's where they become collaborators and supporters. And you also want to make it easy internally for the organization. Create another great tip from Kalina, create internal playbooks. Like, this is how we're going to roll it out. This is what you need to do by this date. These are the type of people that you want you to nominate to the CAB. This is what's in it for them. This is what's in it for you. Same way that you're communicating externally, always remember to keep it simple and communicate and kind of actionable internally. So that's how you start creating an advocacy culture. Everybody can buy in. And Juliana from SAP also gave us some tips about creating that advocacy culture. Different types of companies. SAP, very big company. Asana, much more kind of fast growing startup, now big as well, but very different orientation. And what Juliana did in her tip was like, tying back to Anna's strategy. First of all, understand what are the 5 main organization goals, right? Maybe it's improving revenue. Maybe it's improving profitability. Maybe it's, launching a new product and actually so you want more customer stories on that new product. Maybe a company goal is rebranding. So you want customers help and voice around rebranding. It doesn't really matter what the 5 company goals are. You can find a way and think of a way to get customers to tie into that goal, right? And then tie that to your program. And then while you're doing that kind of strategizing, meet as many people as you can within the company. That was another thing that Juliana did. And kind of, talk to them about brainstorm how customer marketing, how advocacy can tie into their kind of programs and activities. How can I help you meet your goals? And then connect to their KPIs and agree on the mechanisms to work together and track together the results. And that's how you get them to collaborate. So now that we've, understood the importance of strategy and getting internal buy-in and creating a culture of customer advocacy with all the different departments, let's talk about the specific programs. So in reference management, first of all, just kind of giving you, and those of you who were in the workshop also saw this yesterday, but you want to streamline referenceability, right? Whether it's content references, customer stories, videos, whether it's speaking opportunities, whether it's, of course, sales reference calls and support. In all of those things, you want to kind of first start, again, with the strategy, your programs, the audiences. Then you want to know, how are we going to do member recruitment? Who's going to own that? What's the process for that? Is it a self-serve program? Are we giving sales the ability to self-serve and do things themselves, or has to be managed? They have to come from somebody. Is it just about content, or just about thought leadership, or just about sales references? And how do we recognize and reward the customers? Once we have all that aligned in your mind, then you want to align it with those collaborators, right? With sales and CS and everybody else. How does the nomination process look like? Who needs to approve a reference request? Who needs to approve approaching a customer, if at all? What can we do faster and streamline? And again, always what's in it for them. Then you start building the actual workflows. That's, again, where automation can come in place. Like, let's do workflow automation for a customer story or a reference request. Let's see how we track the influence of a review or a reference request or a customer story. Let's brand this program and whatnot. And eventually, kind of, you want to go to the launch, and you want to communicate the launch internally, have internal people support you with the launch, incentivize sales and customer success to collaborate on nominations and launching, and test and iterate the program all the time. So a few tips on reference management. Morgan from Okta basically kind of talked about content management. And she was saying that you want to break customer content into small pieces, consumable pieces, and just serve those, like, instead of just doing the full customer story. So also break it out and give just many more pieces of content to your sales to utilize, or to product to utilize. Then you want to kind of not make the customer the middleman. So in many big corporates or enterprises, you'll have corporate communications need to approve everything, need to approve the PR, need to approve the customer story, need to approve the quote, whatever. In those type of cases, you want to create a relationship with the corporate comms, just so you help them understand that their best interest is in your mind, and you'll just get faster approvals and yes, whatnot. And then You also want to make sure that the need for references is known and visible to the entire company, right? So you don't know who can, of course, customer success and sales are the usual suspects of, hey, they can give you people, nominate people for references. But maybe also, of course, support people can tell you who can be a referenceable customer. Maybe marketers doing events, event marketers can tell you who can be a referenceable customer, and so on and so forth. Of course, executives. And this goes to tracking referenceability. So, I mean, like we said, when you do these activities, you always want to make it visible internally. What have we done in the references? How many new references we have? How many new pieces of content we have? Who's the leading customer? Who's the leading salesperson nominating? And have all that inside Salesforce so everybody can see it and everybody can utilize it. And that's, again, where technology comes into play. Nitzan from Cornerstone talked about, creating a formal reference program, not this kind of, I own my customers, I'm going to use the same customer all the time, don't tell me how to do references. Make sure it's a real program. Make sure people understand, like CSMs and AEs, the value of the real program to them. They're going to show them the value in the sense that they're going to get faster references, better references in sense of matching, and they're also going to protect their customers. They're also going to reward and acknowledge their customers. So they need to understand why they should adopt a program, because sometimes it's hard for them to adopt a new way of working. And you want to make sure that they also, that you have some guardrails like CSMs, not allowing them to approach them directly and ask for a referenceable customer, but going through the tools and the programs. The other thing Nitzan recommends is when you create a reference program and people join your reference pool, ask them some questions, 5, 6, 7 questions, maybe on a form, maybe on a call, doesn't really matter how. And if you want to automate it, a form would be a great way to do that. But then you kind of ask them, okay, but in how many languages can you do the reference calls or provide the content? Or from which competitor did you come to us? Or what is your exact use case? Or we know you have these 3 products in your company. Which of the 3 are you owning? Those will help you then do much more insightful matching and utilization of these references. And last, tips on references from Megan from Google Cloud. It really is your job to help your customers be better storytellers. Whether you give them some, external support on how to be a storyteller, whether you edit their videos or stories with professional people, but help them be better at storytelling is very important. That's one great tip from Megan. And then the other thing is, like, make it a two-way relationship. Talk to your customer, understand what's their broader goal and program. Make it a co-marketing program where you're they're telling their story and their messaging through your co-marketing, and you both win from that. And of course, again, tracking the process, both to show results, but also to prevent, fatigue. You need to be the protector of your customers. We covered references. Let's talk a little bit about reviews. So there's 3 R's in customer advocacy marketing: references, reviews, referrals. All the 3 R's are revenue drivers. That's why they're R's. But let's talk about reviews. How does that work? So Victoria from Numerated basically talked about, we did a review webinar, and she was talking about understand, what you want to focus about. There's many review sites, right? G2, Gartner, Capterra, Trustpilot, TrustRadius, and so on and so forth. Ask your sales teams, hey, but where are customers asking about us? Because then you know which are the most important sites for you to publish in. You can't cover all of them at once. Then when you get, for example, not great reviews, 2-star, 3-star reviews, those happen. Use those to not just improve. So of course, improve the product, improve the experience, try to learn from it, get back to the customer. And then eventually when you improve on it and respond on it, those customers would actually become the most loyal customers and give you 5-star reviews later on. And this also goes to her last tip. Make sure that you follow up on reviews. Make sure that you get back to customers and not just send them to write reviews, but also read those and respond back, acknowledge their work, but also respond to what they commented there. Erwin from Next Thing told us that when you go and use a review platform, try to find one or take a package with buyer intent. So that way you not only have people publish reviews and get more traffic and leads from there, you also know who's looking at you versus competitors and have more leads to give to the business. That's one thing. The other thing is really, you want to understand the different types when you use a review platform. how can you use the platform? Can you utilize things like the reviews in your website? Can you utilize this content in other ways, in reports? Like, you really want to know what you're allowed to do with each one of these review platforms with the content that's on the reviews, so you can leverage it later on in different marketing and different stuff. And based on that, choose also the review platform. A little bit about communities. So we had Scott, who was also on our workshop yesterday, in the past, talk about the relationship. And Scott is, the head of engagement and community at HubSpot. The relationship between community and advocacy, and some tips that he gave in the past. So when you're building a community, whether it's an advocacy community or a general community, of course, you have to have the customers as part of the community team. They have to be involved in the build, because then you know what types of things they want the community to solve for them. Support community, networking, education. What do they expect to see of a community? What are they looking for, right? And also, a lot of groups can benefit from the community. So we can talk about the tie to advocacy. Advocacy and customer marketing can benefit from knowing who's a collaborator and contributor in the community, and they could become advocates. They could also know how different triggers in the community journey and leverage that to targeting customers. That's part of what we do with HubSpot. We basically look at community data, like when did people join, how active they are, what is their status, and based on that, target them with different things relating to customer marketing journeys and advocacy. And you also want to kind of constantly listen to your customers, even have a CAB, a customer advisory board, just for community, just for the advocacy program, and get their inputs so you could always iterate and keep it live. Then Dani in Cultura basically kind of focused on how the community, you need to make sure that the community drives across the business. Again, in marketing teams, it can relate to advocacy and messaging. In support, it can relate to improvement, education content, engineering innovation. So again, this also relates to customer feedback in general and voice of customer in general. This also relates to reviews, feedback. Always take voice of customer and also always show how it kind of ties into different parts of the business and share it with them. And it can, in general, community can also help with SEO, and you want to make sure that part of your community is public, and just utilize that for better SEO and leads from Google. And I'll end with, and keep 5 minutes for questions, with really what is Advocacy 2.0 and where we're going. And here we have, both Liz and Dina from Captivate Collective, which we love and work together a lot. And then you have this new term called Advocacy 2.0. For me, Advocacy 2.0 is really what customer marketing is all about. So it's the evolution from advocacy to customer marketing. And I think, if Advocacy 1.0 was kind of, single destination, let's go to somewhere, to a specific platform, sign up and do stuff over there in a closed garden, Advocacy 2.0 is really much about integrated marketing inside the customer's journey. It's very personalized to each individual user. VPs don't go to a closed garden, right? How do you engage them? White glove versus, SMB. People in the community should be engaged in the community in one way. People who are power users should be engaged in the product. People who are, event participants should be engaged inside events. So really try to think about that ungated advocacy. Like, everybody can be an advocate. They don't have to sign up. If they like you, they might not conceive themselves as advocates, but they can do acts of advocacy. So Advocacy 2.0 is really about opening that garden, engaging people in different places, making it more about engaging their journey and engaging a lot more people within that journey. And then you want to build in kind of a brand umbrella to all your programs. So it's not just a reference program. It's not just a content generation program. Really, the advocacy and customer marketing program should be more holistic, right? These, the way that it looks today, it's how does this tie to referenceability in general, and thought leadership, and influencers, and of course, sales references, content enablement, so helping sales with enablement, product feedback, better support with customers and advocacy. Customers can also help you solve support issues. So it can be a much more holistic approach and program, and it can have a much more holistic kind of umbrella branding for everything that customers do. And really the way that they kind of mapped Advocacy 2.0, and with this we will end, is like building the program with different, right, sections, right? All your customers, engaging them in all the different places, right? So just, you can see the kind of the differences between the left side, which is more of the kind of older activity type, and then the right side, much more activities, much more engagement, and how you kind of, make it strategic, and not just the most strategic customers, but many more, and not just engaging in one place, but more places, and all the customers in all the different touch points, etc. And yeah, with that, we will end. I will stop sharing my screen and we'll take a few questions.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Gal. Perfect. So we have a couple of questions coming in that I'd love to run through. That was so informative, though. There's a huge amount of content there. So the first one, around the reviews section, what are your thoughts on incentivizing reviews?
So it's pretty common today, and there's a great blog by HubSpot. I recommend looking it up in HubSpot blogs and about reviews, where they did a research and they checked 0 incentive for reviews, $10, $15, $20, $25, whatever. But at the end of the day, what we, there's a common practice anywhere between $15 to $25 incentivizing for reviews. It doesn't make much of a difference if you go beyond that. Some cases it works if you don't incentivize at all, if your policy is not to incentivize at all. But in general, people spend about, if they do a good review, they spend about 10 minutes for a review. It's really up to you to decide. And some of them expect immediate incentivization. I did the review, give me the gift card. And in some cases you can say, listen, you just got 200 points and it's just one other advocacy activity that you've done. And when you reach 500 points, you'll get something, right? So those are the two approaches. And, with reviews, it's pretty standard today. Yeah,
understood. Just a couple of housekeeping ones as well. Would you be able to go back to the last slide? Somebody is asking. And also, could you recap your email address or contact info?
Okay.
I will also write it in the chat as you say it.
Sure. So let's share that. So I'm assuming when they're talking about the last slide, it's not this one, but this one. But yeah, this would also help with the email. So you could, this is my email,
perfect.
Crowdvocate.com. And yeah, if somebody wanted to look again at Advocacy 2.0, and again, we'll share, like I said, we can share this deck, and basically people can reach out to me and we can share all of that. But this is a deck from Captivate Collective and how they framed Advocacy 2.0, right?
Awesome. Great. I think they will appreciate that. And then another question is, where do you start? How do you evaluate your customer communications to begin harnessing the voice of customer in your messaging?
Can you repeat that?
Yes, I think it's, how do you evaluate your customer comms to begin harnessing the voice of customer in your messaging? I guess, where do you look for to capture the voice of customer?
Got it. Okay, yeah. So if the question is about how do you find people to become advocates and to capture the voice of customer, then there's many ways, starting from NPS surveys and other satisfaction surveys, through asking your CSM team, your CS team, and asking your salespeople to nominate them. And if you have technology, excuse me, such as Crowdvocate, you could also look at a lot of data metrics. So like I said, who are big people contributing in the community, who are collaborators, who are power users in your product, who are very active in your events, in your blog, in your website. So the more that people are active and engaged in different instances, the more likely that they can become advocates and you could reach out to them. That's one thing. And then in sense of reaching out to them in customer comms, yeah, you could email them, you could do in-app messages to get them on board. You could Slack them. There's many different ways to reach out to customers and kind of ask them to just go and see a program page, understand what it all is about, and sign up to it if they're happy to do that. I hope that answered the question.
Absolutely. Okay, and someone is asking about how they can help customers to increase their tech writing skills. Is there any vendor or a course you'd suggest to help customers increase their technical writing skills about a product?
Yeah, so I think there are a few vendors that what they do is kind of, either teach people how to speak in front of an audience, right? Or teach people how to be better writers, or, teach people how to kind of focus on finding their story, like storytelling, finding their internal story and then telling that, or starting with a story and whatnot. I wouldn't necessarily recommend a specific one, even though we can follow up. If somebody wants to email me, then I can recommend those there. But I mean, I think it's just really about, depending, where you're at in your program, just saying, okay, I want to look for those specific vendors. By the way, sometimes those vendors could be internal. So sometimes your content writer could be that person, your internal content writer could be that person that can talk to customers and help them be better content writers, right? Just on a 30-minute Zoom call. Or sometimes your video editor, if you have one of those, can be the person to talk to your customers and say, hey, these are some tips on doing great videos. Why don't you do that and share with me, and I'll make it, even better then. But I mean, you can find internal experts if it's a big enough company. If not, yeah, there are plenty of external experts to do that.
Perfect. And do you have any advice for kind of senior leadership or C-suite level contacts, getting them active in communities? Do you need a different approach for getting them on board with advocacy?
You definitely need a different approach. Yeah, this is a big challenge always. I think, first, yes, you have to have a different approach. You have to build different programs and kind of your white glove or lighthouse program or whatever you want to call that. And think about, okay, like we said, what's in it for that customer? Why would they collaborate? And I think actually Megan from Google alluded to that, kind of more of a co-marketing approach, coming to them and saying, listen, you care about your company, your brand, right? So let's think about, how do we do collaborative co-marketing activities that build your company, your personal brand and your company's brand, and how your company is great and successful. And we just contribute to that and help with that. So the approach to them, or how can you be in a circle of senior leaders, a customer advisory board with other networking to other CEOs or CMOs or CIOs, depending who that senior customer that you're trying to attract. So it's really thinking about, what are the program values for people in that role, building a very specific program for that, kind of an executive program, and keeping it very focused on that. Like, what's the value for them, networking with people like them, how do they build their personal brand and their company's brand with your help? How do they reach their goals with your help? And just, yeah. And that will help you get them to join the program. And always tell them, by the way, it's a VIP program just for executive people. It's separated from our general advocacy program. So they also feel and understand that that's the focus here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think understanding that it's a two-way relationship is so key.
Yeah.
Okay, we are going to wrap up with one more question. What are some of the key moments in the customer journey where you should be asking for a customer for a referral?
Yeah, so there are many key moments. And I think, first of all, just to kind of naming conventions, referrals is more about, I want you to refer a colleague, a friend, another prospect to be a customer. And reference is, can you be a reference customer and talk to prospects when they're already in the buying process? Sometimes it's confusing, but both of them have their key moments and they're pretty similar. Few things can happen, of course, NPS. So this is a classic. You run an NPS survey, customers give you a 9 or 10. Pretty common to say, okay, since you love us so much, it would be great if you could also refer a friend, right? Or if you can join our reference program. So that would be one key moment. But different things could be when they finished onboarding, they went live and they're happy. So the combination of that, because NPS is just one trigger, I wouldn't necessarily use just that one trigger. I would always look for a combination of key moments. So they finished onboarding and they're happy. They met their first internal goal. So maybe their goal with your product was to achieve 1, 2, 3. They just achieved that. They've just, perhaps had, of course, a PR or anything like that together with you. Then, of course, that's, a next step on that. They spoke in your event. They participated in the event and they gave good feedback to that event. They, for example, just finished their first year, kept on to the second year. That's a great, if they're not yet have been asked, that's definitely a time to ask them again. And many other things, but you want to find things that are significant, like to them, that they feel comfortable and happy with within their journey, that they're achieving their goals, that they're getting what they want from your product. And then kind of tap into those and make that ask.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Okay, amazing. Well, thanks again for a fantastic session. Loads of insights shared. As I said, the Gal's email address has been shared a couple of times in the chat. So if you did miss anything or want to catch up about anything in particular, you can reach him there, or obviously, I guess, connect on LinkedIn. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you for the PMA for having this awesome event. A lot of great speakers. I hope everybody's enjoying it. And good luck.